Which big fountain pen is right for you? Hi everyone, I'm Daisy from Yoseka Stationery, and today we are going to be comparing the Pilot Namiki Emperor, the Pilot Custom Urushi, and the Sailor King of Pen. In today's video, we're going to be giving an overview of these three really large fountain pens. We're going to be doing a quick writing sample of all of them, and we're going to be highlighting the features that are best in each one of these three fountain pens to hopefully point you in the right direction of which of these three large fountain pens is the best one for you. So before we get started, I thought I would talk a little bit about why a big pen in the first place, why choose such a large fountain pen. And if you see these three fountain pens, they really are quite sizable fountain pens, and you might be wondering, like, why even get a big fountain pen to begin with? Well, the first point is going to be comfort. Large fountain pens are oftentimes more comfortable to write with for long periods of time, and a lot of people I've spoken to in store who have arthritis and have developed arthritis in their hands, they can no longer grip a really small fountain pen, which some of the more standard fountain pen sizes are considered to be smaller for them, and so they actually look for a larger, oversized fountain pen that they can easily rest in their hand and write with over long periods of time. So that's the number one reason. It's the number one reason, and it's like the most practical reason why you would choose a large, oversized fountain pen is just comfort. Comfort for writing for long periods of time. The second point also has to do with the symbol of a large fountain pen. Some people, aside from the comfort, obviously are attracted to a large fountain pen in the same way that somebody might be attracted to a larger watch or a flashier car. I think it can be a symbol. And if we look back at the origins of large fountain pens back when they were first introduced by the companies in the early 1900s, pre-war, some of the biggest fountain pens back then, they were definitely sold to be sort of a symbol of status. And in the advertisements that we still have today, looking back on those large fountain pens when they were first being sold in the 1900s, they were definitely being sold as a showpiece, as a status symbol, and that sort of thing. So that is a lot to do with the origin of these fountain pens. The third point of why you would choose a large fountain pen is, again, a practical reason. Large fountain pens come with big nibs. And why do you want a big nib? Well, when you have a big nib on your fountain pen, oftentimes big nibs are softer to write with, and they just produce more pleasant writing experiences. And I think today's video, when we do a writing sample with these three fountain pens, will hopefully show you that the three bigger nibs really do produce a very nice writing experience that really, some might say, is like a true fountain pen writing experience. It really shows off the ink that you're using in a fountain pen, and it flexes a little bit, it bounces with you when you're writing, whereas some fountain pens with a smaller nib might not do these things and might be closer to a gel pen or a rollerball pen. Some might argue that you get the real qualities of a fountain pen when you're using these pens with a big nib. So hopefully that helps you understand a little bit about why somebody would consider a large fountain pen in the first place. I think when you're looking at these relative to, let's pull in a regular pen, when you're looking at these relative to a typical pen, here's like a ballpoint pen, you know, some might think that these are kind of comical for how large they are actually, but there is a practical side for why they are so large, and hopefully you understand a little bit more about that now. Okay, so let's take a look at these three models. So here on the pen tray, I have the Sailor King of Pen, the Pilot Custom Urushi, and the largest one is the Pilot Namiki Emperor. The first thing we'll talk about is the sizes of these pens. Clearly we have kind of a going up in size, starting with the Sailor King of Pen, which is the smallest of all of these three models. The Sailor King of Pen measures about 15 centimeters, 15.2 centimeters in length, and the Pilot Custom Urushi measures 15.5 centimeters, going up to the Emperor, which measures 17.4 centimeters. So this is clearly the largest or the longest fountain pen, which might immediately get you thinking that somebody with larger hands would be better suited for this fountain pen. As for the diameter of the grips, we have a grip on the Sailor King of Pen. This section here, that's the grip. This grip measures 12.4 millimeters in diameter, and the grip on the Custom Urushi is just about the same, 12.3 millimeters. And then the grip on the Pilot Namiki Emperor, on this big pen, it's going to be much larger. It's actually 13.2 millimeters, and I can feel the difference when I'm gripping this pen. As for the weights of these pens, they are 34 grams for the Sailor King of Pen, 44 grams for the Pilot Custom Urushi, and 47.7 grams for the Pilot Namiki Emperor. So this Pilot Namiki Emperor is clearly the largest, the one with the biggest grip, and also the heaviest one to hold. So immediately my mind is thinking this pen is going to be a little uncomfortable for me, who I'm on the shorter side, I have smaller hands. It will probably be better for somebody with like a larger in size. Okay, so let's talk about the materials for these pens. The Sailor King of Pen, just like most Sailor pen models, is made out of a resin body, so it's actually just a plastic body. It's quite light, and that's why this one is 34 grams. It is on the light side. And these two, the Pilot Custom Urushi and the Pilot Namiki Emperor, are made of ebonite and covered with urushi lacquer. The Sailor King of Pen will probably last you just as long as these urushi pens will, but when you're using ebonite and when you're using urushi, it's really more about the luxury of the materials as well as a slightly different feel when you're holding the pen itself. Ebonite pens are slightly softer. It is very difficult to perceive the difference when you're feeling it, and if you didn't know the difference, you probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference, but there is a slight difference in the feel of ebonite versus resin, and you can feel it. People also say that when you hold an ebonite pen, it will warm up the pen a little bit. So it kind of warms up to the warmth of your hand when you're holding the pen. So there is that difference as well. Okay, now let's talk about the fill types for these pens. The Sailor King of Pen and the Pilot Custom Urushi, both of these pens are cartridge converter pens. So you can see here we have a standard Sailor converter inserted into the Sailor King of Pen, and it's not too large, so it really doesn't have a very large ink capacity. It has the same ink capacity as any other Sailor pen would, and some people, to be honest, do find that disappointing that such a large pen only has a standard ink capacity. I'm opening up the Pilot Custom Urushi here, and you can see it also has a converter in here. Like I said, these two are both cartridge converter pens, and once again, some people might be slightly disappointed to find that it just has a normal ink capacity that you would find in any of the other Sailor or Pilot fountain pens that you would get. Whereas the Pilot Namiki Emperor, this guy here, is an eyedropper pen. So that means that you are able to open up this pen, and the barrel is hollow, and you can use an eyedropper. This pen actually comes with an eyedropper, and you would just suck up ink from a bottle and insert it into the pen here. And from my experience, Namiki Emperor takes about 1.5 eyedropperfuls of ink. So that is really a considerable amount of ink that the Pilot Namiki Emperor holds in its body, which some people might think, that's what I want a large pen for. I want my large pen to hold a large amount of ink. So that is one advantage that the Pilot Namiki Emperor has. Next, we'll talk about the nibs. Okay, so I have uncapped all three of these large pens to take a look at their large nibs. All of them have oversized nibs, and you might see right away that one of them, the largest pen, the Pilot Namiki Emperor, has the largest nib. This one is an 18 karat Pilot number 50 nib. The Pilot Custom Urushi comes with also an 18 karat nib, and it's also a large nib. This is an 18 karat Pilot number 30 nib. And then we have the Sailor King of Pen. This is a large nib. This is what Sailor calls their King of Pen nib, and it actually comes in 21 karat. So you can see here on all of the nibs engravings, it says 18 karat, 18 karat, and the Sailor one says 21 karat. So hopefully you can see that. Clearly, in terms of size, the Pilot number 50 nib is the largest of all of these nib sizes, but they all come with a very pure type of gold that isn't even typically found in a standard gold nib fountain pen. So most gold nib fountain pens come with 14 karat gold. So the fact that we're seeing on the Pilot pens the 18 karat nib and the fact that we're seeing on the Sailor pen a 21 karat nib really indicates that these nibs should be very soft when writing with. So that is a look at the nibs of all of these fountain pens. They're all oversized nibs, with the Pilot number 50 on the Pilot Namiki Emperor being the largest of the three nibs, but they're all large nibs compared to regular fountain pens, and they all come with a very soft gold nib, regular to other standard gold nib fountain pens. Okay, so let's do a quick writing sample with all three of these pens and take a look at how each one writes. I'm gonna start with the Sailor King of Pen, and this is an MD paper pad, in case anyone's curious, MD paper. And I'm gonna start with the Sailor King of Pen right here. Okay, I just finished writing quickly with all three pens, so let's take a look at these writing samples. Here is the Sailor King of Pen, and I want to point out that all of these nibs were broad nibs. And so they all are on the thicker side in terms of line width, but I also want to point out that we are not really comparing line width in this video. If you guys are curious about line width, be sure to check out our nib log videos, which are going to be linked below. This video is really comparing all these three pens and trying to figure out which one is right for you. And I think when you're deciding on a pen, you're thinking about a lot more than just line width. So let's talk about some of those things. The Sailor King of Pen in the broad is definitely the thinnest line, and it was a very smooth pen that was really nice to write with and soft as well until you write with the Custom Urushi. The softness of the Pilot Custom Urushi really blew my mind. It was so incredibly soft that it almost takes a minute. You need a break. You need to step back for a minute and you need to readjust how you're writing because it is so soft. So the reason that you're seeing these beautiful sort of, it's called shading in ink, where you see some areas of lighter ink and some areas of darker ink where the ink has pooled. You can really see it here in the word Pilot, is because of how soft this nib is and how wet this nib is. Because even when you're applying the slightest amount of pressure, just from like leaning on the pen a little bit on the downstroke of the P or on the downstroke of any of your characters when you're writing, that is enough on the nib to draw out more ink from the nib. So because of how soft this nib is, you can really see the expression in handwriting a lot more. So that can be a very beautiful quality for people who do a lot of writing, and depending on what you're writing, I think that can be something that's really sought after, or it might be something that's like super frustrating, that when you are leaning on your nib even the slightest bit, you feel the movement of the nib under you. So it really depends on what you like in your writing. Now let's talk about the Pilot Namiki Emperor. The Pilot Namiki Emperor, because it had the biggest nib, the number 50 Pilot nib, it should be, when you're predicting, when you're thinking about how it should write, it should be the softest nib, it should be the smoothest nib, and it should be the wettest nib. But it wasn't, and I almost think that's a good thing, because the Pilot Custom Urushi with the number 30 size nib, this writing sample here, was kind of already pushing the limits of softness, in my opinion. So the number 50 nib was not as soft as the nib found on the Custom Urushi, but it was a really, really wet writer as well, which you can see from all of the dark pools of ink in these letters versus the light areas. So usually what you're seeing is on the downstrokes. When I say downstroke, I mean like this. When you're bringing your pen down, you're usually, if you're a typical writer, you're usually applying more pressure on the stroke of bringing that stroke down, and that's why you see more pooled ink. So all this to say that the Pilot Namiki Emperor does have a very, very wet nib, but it does not have an overly soft nib, which means that it is actually more of a practical choice than I would have thought in the beginning. That being said, that nib was way too large for me. The nib is so large that when I'm writing, for me, with my small hands, when I'm writing, I feel like I almost have to lift my hands up off the paper a little bit farther than I normally would, because the nib is so long that my grip is higher than it normally is on a typical pen, if that makes sense. So because my grip is higher, I feel like I'm having to just lift my hand slightly above the paper a little bit. So for me, it wasn't a very comfortable writing experience to write with this super big number 50 size nib, but I think it would suit somebody with larger hands. Okay, next up, I have prepared some writing samples on different paper types, different paper formats, just to see what writing with these really big pens that are juicier, that are wetter, that take longer to dry, that have thicker line widths, what that writing looks like on different types of paper. So here are some of the different papers that I've prepared. And I thought it was important to write on these papers because previously, and usually in my testing, when I test nibs, I test on a blank pad like this, but I realized that on a blank pad, I can write as big as I want and I can kind of go wherever my hand wants to go. But usually when you're writing, I think for most of us who write, a lot of us are writing in a notebook with lines, in a notebook with dots, in a notebook with a grid. So I wanted to see what it feels to write on a notebook with lines, dots, or grids with these really big, fat, juicy nibs. Do you feel like you're just like all over and you just like, you're not able to write on the line that you normally write on? So I wanted to test that on these different types of papers. Okay, so let's take a look. So first I have here a writing sample with all three pens, the Sailor King of Pen, the Pilot Namiki Emperor, and the Custom Urushi on a 4mm grid, which is found in the Hobonichi planner, which so many of us love and use. So as you can see here, the size of the nib for the Custom Urushi and the Pilot Namiki Emperor kind of made it hard for me to write in the lines, which is what I personally normally do. So if you're writing on an A6 lined notebook with a 4mm line or a 4mm grid, and you're using one of these big pens with these big nibs, you might feel like you actually need a lot more space. So that's something to really think about. I wanted to upgrade the line width then. So next I tried a 5mm grid. So here I wrote with the same three pens, the Namiki Emperor, the Custom Urushi, and the King of Pen broad. These are all broad sizes on an MD notebook in grid, and MD uses 5mm grid, so this is a 5mm grid. And this I really felt like was much more tolerable, like I could actually write in the lines of this 5mm grid and still be able to read my handwriting and write comfortably on every line without feeling like I have to skip lines like I did in the 4mm grid, where this is kind of really making it hard to read certain lines. So this was good, 5mm grid. And then next I tried an MD notebook with line spacing. This is 7mm line spacing on an MD notebook. And this is really where I felt like I could write with all three pens very comfortably, the Sailor King of Pen, the Custom Urushi, and the Pilot Namiki Emperor. And then I also tried a fine medium of the Pilot Custom Urushi just for fun. And you can see here, like, the writing on all of these pens is much more legible, and it feels like I can breathe in each line a little bit more comfortably. So that is something that I wanted to just point out really quickly as well, that it matters with these pens what kind of paper you're going to be writing on, whether it's line, dot grid, or whatever it is you choose blank. The spacing of the lines or the grid is something that's pretty important, because you might feel like claustrophobic in that space that you're trying to write in with these pens. Okay, so which big fountain pen is right for you? Let's talk about this a little bit. We started off the video with this question, and I think we have some answers. Hopefully we have some answers. And the answer is basically, it depends on who you are. It depends on what you're doing with your pens. So let's start off with the Sailor King of Pen. I personally love this pen. If you guys will remember, it's the smallest of all three pens. And for me, I'm 5 feet tall and I don't have very big hands. This pen for me was the most comfortable to write with and the most practical for if you're actually going to be journaling, writing entries in a notebook, in a journal, and you want to be able to read back on them. The reason that this is like the most practical for me is because, like I said, I have small hands, and also because the nib is smooth and wet, but not overly smooth and not overly wet. For an overly wet nib, you would have to wait for the ink to dry for a longer amount of time. And when I write in my journal entries, I kind of just want to get it all out, close my book, move on. So I don't really have that much time to wait for the ink to dry when I'm writing in my journal entries. So that's why the King of Pen is good for me, and it's probably good for you if you're somebody who really writes in your journals, writes quickly, doesn't want to wait for a long time for your ink to dry, and you are on the smaller side and you don't have really big hands. So that is the Sailor King of Pen. Next, I want to talk about the Pilot Custom Urushi. Why would you choose this pen? You should choose this pen if you are somebody who loves a soft, springy nib. This is the softest, smoothest, springiest nib I have ever tried in my life. It was too smooth for me, to be honest. I really realized after comparing the Custom Urushi and the King of Pen that I do like a little bit of feedback. I like to feel my paper, and the Custom Urushi was just a tad too smooth, and there was just way too much ink coming out. I think that if you are somebody who loves to show off your ink, if you do in particular a lot of letter writing and you want to send out beautiful handwritten letters, you have great handwriting, great cursive, and you want your letter when it's received to make like a pow, like an impact on someone where they're thinking, what pen is that? I think the Custom Urushi is the pen for you because it will really bring out ink's qualities to its fullest extent if you don't mind giving the ink some time to dry on your paper, because this is really laying down so much ink. So that's the Custom Urushi. If you have small hands, this is still tolerable. It's not so big that it's like uncomfortable, I can't write with it. So even if you have smaller hands, but you do really want to show off your handwriting, show off your ink in your letters, and you don't mind waiting a long time for your ink to dry, the Custom Urushi is the pen for you. And it is really something that I think everybody should try because it's a very smooth, soft pen that I haven't written with anything like it. Next, the Pilot Namiki Emperor. Who should choose this pen? Somebody with really large hands. So if you are on the taller side, if you have bigger hands, this is maybe the pen for you. It is a very wet writer as well, so you will have to wait some time for your ink to dry, so it will show off your ink really beautifully. And it has a really large ink capacity, which we saw that the Custom Urushi and the Sailor King of Pen do not. The Sailor King of Pen and the Custom Urushi are typical cartridge converter pens that have very standard ink capacities. The Pilot Namiki Emperor holds as much ink as you'd like in its barrel, which means that you can travel with with it and you don't have to bring extra ink. You can just have this one pen packed with you, and that's probably all you'll need for the length of your trip. So if that sounds like you like a wet writer, you don't like a nib that's too soft. This nib was really surprisingly not too soft. And you actually do like a lot of writing. Like, this is a practical, I would say this is a practical pen. If you have larger hands, it would be great for somebody who actually writes a lot if you have larger hands. That's like the one caveat with this pen. You really do need larger hands for the Pilot Namiki Emperor. If you have all those things, I would say this is a good pen for you. Okay, so there you have it. The differences between the three largest pens that we have here at Yoseka, the Pilot Namiki Emperor, the Custom Urushi, and the Sailor King of Pen. If you are deciding between these three large pens, I hope this video helped you to decide. Let us know in the comments if you learned something new about large pens, and let us know in the comments which of these three pens would you choose for your life and how would you use it. Thank you all so much for watching, and be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video if you enjoyed watching. Thank you.